I've decided to start 2025 with a 30-day project, and it's actually a few days into January. I need this project to be flexible because at times I'm dealing with migraine and I obviously want to spend time with my family. So, what I've done is I've started to prep for the project, and the goal is that I'm going to do some free motion embroidery of the single line drawings that I do in my sketchbook. And this will provide me with 30 faces or figures or animals or creatures, whatever I decide to do, but 30 things that I can use in larger pieces throughout the year that I can embroider on and work with. I have felt. There's 4 sheets about this size, and I've cut this white linen sheet down to the size of the felt. I'm going to anchor it to the felt after I transfer the drawings over, and by anchoring it to the felt, I will be able to do the free motion embroidery on it. By allowing myself to do it this way, this means that there are certain days where I may make more than one face. I'm not going to keep it to I have to do one a day. I'm going to give myself that flexibility. The big decision now is what am I going to use? And I think I'm going to do a combination of things. I think I'm going to plagiarize myself. Sorry, I can't talk a bit this morning. I'm going to plagiarize myself and copy some things directly from my sketchbook. I have some of these drawings that I really love and I think might translate well to embroidery. Of course, I'll still paint things in my sketchbook, but I kind of just want to experiment with all of the different stuff that I have in here. And again, I have some really cool stuff that I think would translate different ways and look really interesting as far as a textile art project. I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to do with them on the larger scale, but I might remix them. I'm still working on my remix Artist Home Residency, so I might take these and cut them apart a bit and then restitch them back together as well. And by using the felt, it's going to give it some, I guess you'd say some weight or some heft that when I cut things apart, it will support it and the sewing won't come apart too much. Anyway, let's get started, and I will put some of my faces on here and then I will go over to the sewing machine. This fabric is a bit translucent, and that makes it very easy to trace any of the images from my sketchbook. So because I started off a little bit behind, I figured it was easy to just use the sketchbook images. And my whole goal is to not just have the 30 faces to work on throughout the year. I'll be adding paint and embroidery stitches to them as I embellish them, probably some beadwork as well. But I also want to improve my skills with freehand embroidery. Probably later on in the month, I will also create some faces and figures that are not traced from my sketchbook. I will pull out a reference photo and I will practice single line drawing, but instead of using a pencil or a pen, I will be using the sewing machine. And in this fashion, I am hoping to be able to stitch a little more easily with the freehand embroidery. Right now it's easier when I go larger, but I know that I can get smaller detail, smaller size images. I've seen a lot of other artists do similar, and I want to improve with that. I've only ever created one complete artwork with the freehand embroidery stitching. So this will be a way that I can improve upon that skill, and I will have these faces to work on throughout the year. And one of the things that I like to do when I embroider, I will often do this on the weekends or in the evenings when my partner has time off. He and I will sit and watch a movie, and I always need my hands to be busy. So I will stitch while we're watching a movie or streaming one of our favorite TV series. Before I stitched, I took the time to iron the linen. You can see it was just a little bit wrinkly, and this will ensure that I have a nice even design to stitch on. Before doing the free motion stitching on the designs themselves, I put a little bit of stitching in each of the corners, and this just anchors the linen to the felt. I could use pins, but in most of the tutorials that I saw, the people who were doing the free motion design were either using a hoop that was designed for their machine, or they were doing something similar to this, in which they anchored the main fabric to some kind of a base fabric. And some of them had stated that they didn't use the pins because on their machine, the needle is jumping around so much that it can hit the pin and break. I don't know if this is the case. I'm not that savvy with the sewing machine, but this works well enough for me, and I can be lazy and not get the pins out. I am going to start with some of the more simplistic designs and then work my way down to some of the ones that have a little more detail and are a little bit smaller in size. And maybe over the month, I will gradually go down to a smaller size image. I did leave this one blank so that I could freehand try the single line drawing from a reference only and not from a trace design. I will probably do that later in the month because I've got my first 7 days outlined here on these sheets, and now I just have to go to the sewing machine. Okay, and here is the finished stitched face, the first one done. There is a little bit of creative license and play when you're doing something like this, and I will be able to make a little bit of changes with some of the paint. I'll be using mostly watercolor, maybe acrylic on it, and the stitching will change the way that the face looks. I did add in a little bit more hair down here. I can add in more as I come in with hand stitching. We'll see what I do when I finally get to that face. Now we're going to move on to the second face. I just finished the second face. There's some parts I don't really like. I think I was moving too quickly. I messed up the nose and the mouth a little bit. I'll have some creative leeway when I come back and stitch it. I'm also debating about if this is going to be one of the faces that I cut apart and collage into one of the other faces. We'll see what I do with it. I'm not too concerned that I went over the line here. You can see that it's pretty sturdy throughout where it's stitched now. It's not going to loosen itself from the backing. I debated about cutting this in half to make it easier to stitch on. But then I thought maybe this size is better to work within a hoop. Maybe I'll play around. Maybe the next one I'll cut in half. We'll see. 2 faces down for the month and 28 more to go. So let's move on to face number 3. So I think you have the idea of me stitching on the machine, and I think the video is going to become really long if I continue to show me stitching every single time. It's freehand embroidery, and if you're interested in trying freehand, or I should say free motion embroidery on your sewing machine, you can look up tutorials on YouTube. There are tons of them, and you likely already have the materials and your supplies to start that with your machine. So this is day 3. Here, I was a lot happier with how things are coming out. I slowed myself down a little bit. I'm trying to find a good speed for myself as far as when I'm working. Sometimes I go too fast, sometimes too slow. And in some of the tutorials, they had recommended that speed made things go better. Just some areas are too detailed for me, and I need more experience with it, which is going to happen over this month. So here is day 4. Again, this one came out a lot better. One of the earlier ones, I didn't do a good job with the mouth and the teeth. I like how this one has come out. And the last 3 days here, we have day 5, 6, and 7. I had a little bit of some issues here. This one went well, and this is one of the smaller pieces that has a little more detail, but overall I'm happy with how it came out. But I started having some problems with my machine here, and you can kind of see the mess. Let's see if you can see these messy, loose stitches here. Even though I didn't do anything to change the settings in my machine, the tension settings of the thread somehow changed. And I ended up with this mess on the back. And I also had some problems with the thread sensor. And I spent these 2 trying to work things out and troubleshoot things. Eventually, I got everything going just fine. But I'm not going to toss these out. I'm going to keep this mess and just incorporate it into the pieces themselves. So I'll be doing more videos of all of these as I do them. I don't know if I'm going to share them day by day or every few days at a time. We'll see. I've left myself with enough leeway that on some days I might be doing one, and on other days I might be doing multiple. So for example, I'm supposed to go have coffee with some friends tomorrow, and if I'm going to go and do that, then I might not have time to work at my machine tomorrow. And so then what I will do is I will allow myself on another day to do 2 of these pieces, and giving myself that flexibility will help me ensure that I can actually complete a 30-day challenge without being overwhelmed. So I hope you'll stick around and see what these end up becoming. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.